I've got one that can see.
Welcome to Dinosaur Adventureland. This is the Science Center, day 6, where we go over the dinosaurs. So we've got some interesting things here. Here's a picture of fossilized dinosaur skin. You'll notice the circles in the skin of the dinosaurs. These are Ica stones from Peru, over 1,000 years old. They depict dinosaurs on the stones, and you can actually see the circles in the skin of those dinosaurs. Interesting. How did they know about dinosaurs 1,000 years ago? We only started piecing the bones together in the 1800s. How did they know? How did they know specifically what the skin looked like? We can compare that skin to other reptiles here. We can see the circles in their skin. You got the Draco flying lizards. Reptiles never stop growing throughout their lifetimes. On day 2, we go over Dr. Hovind's canopy theory. If there was an ice canopy that encapsulated the world when God originally created it, it's likely that we had more oxygen and more air pressure. We actually find the proof of this in fossilized amber with the air bubbles that have 32% oxygen in them. We're only breathing in 21%, so that's 50% more oxygen. So if the reptiles had 50% more oxygen under greater air pressure, they would be growing much, much bigger. They would live a lot longer. Here we've got one of Dr. Hovind's longevity charts here. People living before the flood into their 900s, floods happening here, and you see how the ages drop off rapidly after the flood. Well, it says during the flood, the fountains of the deep broke open. So if the crust of the earth was one solid piece before that flood, imagine all the pressure built up under the crust. If all of a sudden it gets released with enough force, it might be shooting rocks up into the atmosphere. If that ice canopy's there, it would shatter. All the super cold ice being magnetic would have been drawn to the poles. You get your polar ice caps. They find mammoths frozen, standing up, with food still in their mouth. How do you freeze a mammoth so fast he can't even finish chewing? Well, he could have been buried in ice from the canopy shattering. If the canopy shattered, the air would spread out, less concentration of oxygen, less air pressure. We're not getting shielded from UV radiation we're soaking in from the sun anymore. We're aging a lot faster as a result of what happened during Noah's flood. The reptiles aren't growing as big as they used to. Here we've got a Jackson chameleon. He's got the 3 horns, the ridge behind the horns. You could take a good look at his skin. You can see the similarities there between the dinosaurs. Now, if he kept on growing and got to a big size, what do you think you'd call him? Could be a little triceratops right there in the jar. So the reptiles are not growing as big as they used to. What about the veiled chameleon? Doesn't he look like a little dinosaur? Fascinating. Could be a parasaur. Oh, there's an example for you that we might still even be living with these dinosaurs today. They're just not as big as they used to get before the flood. So come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. Come take the Science Center tour where we go over a lot more details about some of the dinosaurs that are alive today. Thanks for joining us. God bless.
Hey folks, here we are at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. This was a gravel pit for years. They dug down about 30 feet of all the gravel, sand, and clay out of here, and they stopped right here at this cliff. You can still see these gravel layers. These layers go all the way to North Carolina, 500 miles. Why would there be gravel layers? It's gravel, sand, clay. The kids are taught in school that each of the layers of the earth is a different age. The geologic column is one of the biggest lies ever taught in the history of the world. The geologic column does not exist. There's no such thing as a Jurassic age or Triassic or Mississippian. It's all baloney. All these layers formed at the same time. They say the top layer is younger. I say, really? Where did it come from? Every time people come to our tour here, we show them this little jar that I shake up. It always settles out into gravel, sand, clay. Gravel, sand, clay. Every time people come, we flip this little thing over, and it always makes hundreds of little bitty layers. Now wait a minute. They tell the kids the layers are different ages. If you shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? No, they're all the same age. This geologic column is one of the biggest hoaxes ever. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting all the layers. Well, how long does a dead tree stand around? Here at this latitude in Lennox, 31 degrees above the equator, we're turning almost 900 miles an hour. The sideways moving water at 900 miles an hour would take all the rocks and roll them against each other like a rock tumbler does, and round them off. All over the world, gravel is rounded. They call it river rock. No, this is from the flood. It was rounded back and forth by the tide going back and forth. These rounded rock layers go to North Carolina. If that's a river, that's a big river, 500 miles. All over the world, petrified clams are found. Normally when you find seashells along the beach, as soon as they die, they open. Well, and you hardly ever find a matched pair. But all over the world, petrified clams are found in the closed position. Petrified closed clams. It had to be buried alive quickly. If the water came up 200 feet and came in at 900 miles an hour, it's going to make a layer of mud 50 feet thick in 10 seconds and bury the clam bits. They find petrified closed clams on top of Mount Everest, tallest mountain in the world full of seashells. Today, the world's record biggest oyster is 14 inches. They find fossilized oysters in the mountains in Peru, 500 of them, all bigger than the world's record. Here's a guy laying on one. There's an 11.5-foot oyster found 2 miles above sea level. I think there was a flood. If the water came up 200 feet and came in at 900 miles an hour, it's going to knock all the trees down and bury them under a layer of mud and form coal. Did you know coal is always found in seams? No exception. Sometimes multiple layers of coal. Coal, gravel. Well, that's the tide going back and forth, a different tide. Every 6 hours, 12.5 minutes, you'd have a tidal change. Noah was in the ark for 880 tidal changes. The water came up, down, in, out, 880 times. It'd make all these layers in one day, not millions of years. We shook this up a few minutes ago. It's already settling out. Gravel, sand, clay. Give it a few more minutes, see what it does. It does it every time. The flood explains all the geology of the world. There is no such thing as a geologic column. One of the biggest lies ever taught to kids in school. They say during the Archean era, there's no such thing as an Archean era. This geologic column that they teach is the Bible to the evolutionist, number one, and it's an absolute lie.
Living below in this old sinful world, hardly a comfort can afford. Sing it with me. Striving alone to face temptation so. Won't you tell me where could I go but to the Lord?
Here's the story that Ron Wyatt told me before he died. I sat in his living room and talked to him for 3 hours about the Ark of the Covenant. He said, Brother Hovind, I found the Ark of the Covenant. I said, yeah, right. Okay, and I'm Methuselah. I'm still around. He said, no, Brother Hovind, I really did. I said, well, tell me about it, Ron. Now, Ron was a great guy. He was the kind of guy that if I was God, I would let him find all these things because he wasn't out for any glory. He's not bragging about it. He wasn't, not looking for money. Just wanted to, he's a humble servant of the Lord. He had a lot of Seventh-day Adventist teaching in him, which I would disagree with, some of the things they teach. He wasn't a Seventh-day Adventist, but he believed some of the things they believe, okay? He said, I was walking along the north side of Jerusalem and with an Israeli friend of mine, and we're walking along talking about things and what happened here, because Ron's been a student of Scripture for many, many years, okay, and knew it extremely well. He said, we're walking along. All of a sudden, my left arm stuck out, and I pointed to this garbage dump. There's a pile of rubble been there for hundreds of years, you know, up against the side of this cliff. And there's a road along the bottom. There's a big cliff and, you know, another plateau on top. He said, my left arm stuck out, and my mouth started speaking. And my mouth said, that's Jeremiah's grotto. The Ark of the Covenant's down there.
I've got one that can see.